Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to 1 out of 1's Quran Critique. So we're going to wrap up the rest of the little books. There's a ton of little books, and sadly, for the critique's sake, a lot of them are very inconsequential. So for the ones that are inconsequential, I'm just going to give you the little bit of a snapshot of what they are, and then if you want to, you can go back and read them yourself. But there's not a lot of surahs left at the end of the Quran that really matter. Like, they could disappear from the Quran, and a lot of the tenets of Islam would not disappear with it. Like I said before, the Quran is very repetitive. It repeats so many different things over and over and over. So we're going to zip our way through the end of this one, but there are a few ones that are important for us to point out. But first, we shall begin with Surah 99, also called the Quake or the Earthquake. In the name of God, the Gracious, the Merciful. This one for the most part is inconsequential. But the important part here that I'm going to hit is that this part right here, whoever has, this is talking about a large earthquake at the end of times. Basically, that when the judgment day comes, it'll come with an earthquake. On that day, it will tell tales, for the Lord your God has inspired it. On that day, people will emerge in droves to be shown their works. Whoever has done an atom's weight of good will see it. Whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it. Basically, everybody's going to see it. It's just a very poetic way of putting it. Doesn't really change anything. All right, so the racers, also known as the snorting horse. This one is also mainly inconsequential. It'll be tied to another one about greed. This one is primarily about greed, and we'll cover one on greed in a little bit because it's a little bit more direct. But for the most part, God don't like greedy people. Surah 101, the Shocker. And the Shocker is also known as the Clatterer. Okay, so this is one of the ones here that's important. Okay? In the name of God, the Gracious, the Merciful, the Shocker. What is the Shocker? What will explain to you what the Shocker is. The day when the people will be like scattered moths, and the mountains will be like tuft wool. And for he whose scales are heavy, he will be in a pleasant life. But as for he whose scales are light, his home is the abyss. Do you know what it is? A raging fire. All right, so we got a picture of hell. We've got a picture of the afterlife. Got a picture of Judgment Day. Here is what is interesting. Verse 6. As for he whose scales are heavy, he will be in a pleasant life. But as for he whose scales are light, his home is the abyss. We've talked about this recurring theme over and over in Islam, where faith is not enough. Works are required in order for salvation to be obtained. Salvation is, at the end of the day, even though you believe, like we looked at previously in Surah 98, the clear evidence. Christians do a lot of the same things that Muslims are commanded to do in terms of like doing good, but because they're not Muslim, they're not going to be saved. So you have to believe in Islam, and you have to have good works. Believing in Islam's not enough. You have to have good works to go with it. Works-based salvation, even when faith is tied with it, works have to come with your salvation in order to be saved. All right? Moving on to abundance. This is going to be a little confusing because some of the titles are switched around, but like I said, it's very repetitive, so this is not shocking that it happens. Surah 102 is called Abundance here in my paperback. It is called Greed for More and More. For the most part, this one is fairly inconsequential, but this is very similar to the previous one of the Snorting Horse. Basic knowledge of it. God stands against greed. Abundance distracts you until you visit the graves. Indeed, you will know. Certainly, you will know. If you knew with knowledge of certainty, you would see the inferno. Then you would see with the eye of certainty. Then on that day, you will be questioned about the bliss. Okay? Basically, there's a lot that talks here about the end to come. All right, next one, time or the passage of time. Surah 103. In the name of God, the Gracious, the Merciful, by time, the human being is in loss, except those who believe and do good works and encourage truth and recommend patience. All right? Basically, it's just saying as a starting point, human beings are lost except those who believe and do good works. Okay, so this again singles it down to Islam. Those who are outside of Islam, no chance for you. You have to believe and you have to have good works. A lot of repetition here. All right, Surah 104, the backbiter. And the basic one here, this is another one that has a lot of greed here, like woe to the end to every slanderer, backbiter who gathers wealth, counts it over, thinking his wealth has made him immortal, and God punishes him, throws him into what they call the crusher. Basically, this is just hell, okay? This is hell. The greedy are thrust into the crusher. Surah 105. Like I said, a lot of these, there's not much consequence, and there will be some more to come, but at the moment, there's very little. But here's one that we've got some interesting stuff to talk about, and this is one that I could actually use some help on. So this is supposed to be talking about This is supposed to be talking about a historical event. I'm having problems finding some sources. So maybe some of you can help me, especially if some of you have some access to some scholarly works or know of some ancient documents that would say otherwise. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, have you not considered how the Lord dealt with the people of the elephant? Did he not make their plan go wrong? He sent against them swarms of birds, throwing at them rocks of baked clay, leaving them like chewed up leaves. This is describing a siege on Mecca that happened around the year of 570. And it was supposed to come from, I think it was Ethiopia, but I'm not positive on that. And it was supposed to be like a caravan of war elephants that were coming up, which is why it's named the elephant. Muslim sources will tell you that the elephants came and the droves came and everything came, and then suddenly God sent birds from the sky to drop rocks on their heads, and it killed the army. Those who did not die turned back and ran away. The problem is I really have not been able. I spent about a good 30 minutes trying to find some historical source that wasn't an Islamic source about it, because of course Islamic sources are going to be a little skewed towards the miraculous. And like on one hand, like I get that this is the same type of measuring stick we would have to hold up against the Bible. I get it, because some of it seems a little hard to prove. You know, what's up with the floating axe head in 2 Kings? What's up with the sun standing still in Joshua? These things don't make a ton of sense. But at the same time, this is a much more recent thing, and it's a very, very, very specific thing that could be very provable. But I've just not been able to find anything about it. It seems like the main proofs for it is Muhammad. Now, we know that the siege failed. The siege did happen. The siege did fail. We have no sources outside of Islamic sources about the birds. So if you guys know anything, please post it in the comments, because I would love to find any source outside of pro-Islamic sources that can verify anything about this whole event. All right, so Surah 106. This is a pretty inconsequential surah about Muhammad's tribe. Surah 107, and like I've always said, I'm not trying to pull something over on you. You can go to it. It's clearquran.com where I'm getting this. You guys can read it for yourself. This one called Assistance. It is also called Small Things. And this is basically written to people who pray in order to be seen, but they don't necessarily have good works and they don't necessarily have faith. We can see some parallels to the Bible there, perhaps where we get some inspiration for that. Surah 108. This one is called Plenty on the website, but it is called Abundance here. You see where it's kind of confusing. They kind of switch some of the phrases around, but this one is also very inconsequential. We have given you plenty, so pray for the Lord and sacrifice. He who hates you is the loser. Sometimes it can come across a little childish. Surah 109, the disbelievers. Now we're getting into this. All right, so in my paperback, this one is called Those Who Deny Truth. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the most pointless chapter that I have read thus far in the Quran. This is the most inconsequential, pointless, senseless. Why did you write this chapter in the entire Quran? In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, say, O disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, nor do you worship what I worship. Nor do I serve what you serve, nor do you serve what I serve. You have your way, and I have my way. What is the point? What is the point of writing that? You don't believe what I believe. Yeah, that's been established, my dude. You're not gonna believe what I believe. Again, I think we've established that, my bro. You have your religion, and I have mine. Ugh. I don't get why this surah is included. But what I'm betting happened, and we'll get to this in a minute, because there are some moments where Aisha points out that anytime Muhammad wanted something, he would get a revelation from God that allowed him to get that. For example, in Islam, the number of wives you're allowed to have is supposed to be capped at 4, but then Muhammad apparently got a vision that said that only he was allowed to have more than 4 wives. So this potentially could have been just him ranting about something when in his life. It could have been ranting about somebody that maybe was continuously arguing about him, or maybe, just maybe, somebody he'll write about in a little bit. All right. Do I have any other notes about it? Yeah. There's no convincing in that. It's just a line in the sand, and it's the end. Surah 110. This one is called Help or Victory. This one is, again, very inconsequential, very pointless, doesn't really accomplish anything theologically for them or socially for them. Surah 111. Here it is called Thorns, and it is called Twisted Fiber. Now, you remember when I was talking a minute ago about how it seemed like he was kind of writing something out of frustration? Let's look at Surah 111. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. Condemned are the hands of Abi Lahab. I'm trying. Yeah, Abi or Abu Lahab. And he is condemned. His wealth did not avail him, nor did what he acquired. He will burn in a flaming fire, and his wife, the firewood carrier, around her neck is a rope of thorns. You good, Atomic? All right. Anyways. So, who is this Abi or Abu Lahab? This is Muhammad's uncle who opposed him. This is Muhammad's uncle who was not convinced. And here he says, condemned are my uncle's hands, and his wife, the firewood carrier, around her neck is a rope of thorns. Let me ask you something. Why would Allah give this revelation? Why would Allah give this revelation? If there's, I mean, we've already covered in some of the previous surahs the disbelievers. I mean, just a few surahs back, we talked about those who deny. Just 2 surahs back, we talked about those who deny truth. A few surahs before that, you go to the clear evidence. We talked about them there. Why wouldn't he be included in just those? Why is this very specific surah being given to this very specific individual? Could it be because these revelations are the way that Muhammad can justify his bad behaviors, and the way that he can justify his hatred for individual people? So here, his uncle stands against him. His uncle's wife stands against him. Well, Allah says that they're condemned to hell. it, it should be very troubling how petty the Quran can be from time to time. And I found this to be one of the most petty surahs thus far. There will be others, but for right now, I find it one of the most petty. All right, Surah 112, called Monotheism in this translation, and in my paperback, it's called Oneness. There's a small statement in here refuting Jesus. Say, he is God the One, God the Absolute. He begets not, nor was he begotten, and there is none comparable to him. So this is another little refutation of the Trinity. Jesus is God. Not Jesus is God. Jesus is a prophet. He is definitely a prophet of God. He was not killed on the cross, but he did ascend into heaven. We'll get into that when we get to women in Surah 4. But he is not God. He is by no means God. God has no need for a sacrifice, and God has no need to have a son. He doesn't have a son. He is just one. Okay? So small little statement there. Surah 113, Daybreak. And I've got a little bit of a note here. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, say, I take refuge with the Lord of Daybreak, from the evil of what he created, and from the evil of the darkness as it gathers, and from the evil of those who practice sorcery, and from the evil of an envious when he envies. Gotcha, okay. All right, so here's the big issue here. It's not a huge one, I guess. It might cause some issues within Islamic belief, but I'm still just scratching the surface of my study of Islam. But one of the things I noticed right away is in Christianity, we have debates about, did God author evil? God created everything, but did he create evil? And so if he didn't create evil, then, it must not be God because he didn't create everything. Or is evil just a perversion of the good that God created? Well, here, it seems like they have a similar debate going on here. I take refuge with the Lord of Daybreak, from the evil of what he created. I looked up a commentary about this from an Islamic source. And the basic idea here is that Allah creates everything. And while he doesn't create evil specifically, evil is a byproduct. And I'm trying to use the words as exactly as I read them. Evil is a byproduct of God's creation. So in a way he creates evil, but in a way he doesn't. Okay? So that's all the note that I have for that. And then finally, we get to the last one, Surah 114, Mankind, or People, in my paperback. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, say, I seek refuge in the Lord of mankind, the King of mankind, the God of mankind, from the evil, sneaky whisperer, who whispers into the hearts of people from among jinn and among people. That's right, Islam believes in little genies. It's very interesting. That is the end of the Quran. So if you're watching this at the time of the release, this will be the second episode that you see. If you are watching this after the Quran critique is done, this will be the last one in the playlist, unless I decide to do something else. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Check it out for yourself. Read it for yourself. I can honestly say that the more that I've read of the Quran, the less I am convinced that it has anything to do with God's revelation whatsoever. And all I had to do was just crack it open and read. Thank you guys very much, and I'll see you later.